Hi, my name is Becky with A Better Way to Homeschool, and this is How to Teach Your Kids to Write. A few years back, my husband got us a special invitation to go see the last flight of the space shuttle at NASA. It was quite a privilege. He was working with NASA at the time, and so we had special guest passes behind the scenes to watch the space shuttle land at Edwards Air Force Base in California. To say it was fantastic is an understatement. One of the things that the kids recall, we have 5 sons, and they were all able to go that day. And one of the things that the kids noted most about that day was, yes, the space shuttle was fantastic, and the hype behind watching it land for the last time was unbelievable. But what they remember the most was the scorching heat. This is the Mojave Desert. It was about 115 degrees, and we were standing in the shade just underneath the tarmac. And even there in the shade, we had beads of sweat dripping down our backs. It was fantastic. So hot. We were so excited. We kept going out into the sun, and then we'd retreat to the shade. What does all this have to do with writing? So what, Becky? You got to go see the space shuttle. That's cool for you. Well, when the kids had to write or got to write about NASA and the space shuttle and what it was like to see that last voyage, they didn't hesitate. They were able to pull from all of their senses because they had stood there. They had smelled the exhaust. They had felt the heat of the sun. They had experienced the smell of all of those bodies standing in the heat. And they could feel the electricity in the air from all the excitement, from all these engineers with NASA watching this thing land. And so when they had an opportunity to do a creative writing assignment about that thing in aerospace, they had a wealth of knowledge to pull from. And so in this workshop, it's going to be fast. It's about 20-25 minutes, quick overview to give you the skills, the tools, the tips to help you take your kids from where they are today into being more proficient and more skilled writers in the future. But I have some goodies for you. First of all, thank you for joining us in the 2019 Homeschool Moms Conference. Isn't this amazing? Remember, you can pause the videos at any time. So I want you to grab the resources that I have for you. Yours are blue, mine are gray, because my printer only has black and white ink. But you're looking for the How to Teach Kids to Write. First of all, I have a note sheet for you to take some notes as we're talking, but I want you to see the 2 other things that I have in there for you. I have a quick reference cheat sheet for you to keep track of everything that we're going to be talking about. And then I have a special resource. As you are going through and visiting all the workshops, I want you to take the time to write down the workshops that you attend, to grab the contact information for the speaker, whoever gave that workshop, to jot down any questions that you might have for that speaker, and then to give that workshop a scale of 1 to 10 on how worthwhile was it for you to spend that pocket of time. And that way you can reference it later when you're writing your thank you out to Heather. So anyway, let's get busy. So how do you teach your kids to write? I have just a few golden nuggets of how to teach kids to write. Now, like I said, my name is Becky. I've been homeschooling for over 20 years. I have 5 sons. I have taught for a few years in a classroom. I have taught workshops to homeschool moms and to homeschool kids on writing. And even today, I am mentoring my own children in their writing endeavors. So I have this couple decade of experience of having gone from not being able to teach writing to watching kids just blossom and bloom as they get their confidence in writing. So how do you do that? The secret to teaching kids to write has nothing to do with holding a writing utensil. What do I mean? I was talking to my kids recently and we were talking about spending money and we were talking about budgeting and how everything that we put into our bucket is what we get to use. It's a budgeting bucket. It's the analogy that I always use with the kids. When daddy gets paid, all that money goes into an imaginary bucket. And then from there, that money is divided and separated into the different categories in our budget as we are buying food or paying for our house. If it doesn't go in the bucket, it can't come out. Does that make sense? And the kids always nod. Well, our kids' heads are just like that. The scariest thing that we can give our kids when it comes to writing is a blank piece of paper. Have you ever done that? Hand your kids a blank piece of paper and a pencil and say, I want you to write a story, or I want you to write an essay, or I want you to write a paragraph. And they sit there and they're shocked or whining and complaining because their brain goes blank. It's the same thing with budgeting. It works the same way with writing. You have to fill your child's imagination, their minds, with ideas, facts, thoughts, and categories of things to draw from before they ever pick up a pencil. So, what is the secret sauce to teaching kids to write? How do we fill their imaginations so that they have a wealth of knowledge to draw from as they are writing? Do you know what it is? Do you want to know what the secret is? The secret sauce to teaching your kids to write is to read a lot. Fill your kids' heads with stories, picture books, comics, novels, chapter books, audio books, even the creative packaging on things like the Old Spice deodorant. If you've never read the description on the back of an Old Spice deodorant tube, do it the next time you're at the grocery store. Filling their heads with creative ideas is where writing starts, because you can't pull ideas out of an empty bucket. You gotta fill the bucket first. And the best way to fill your kids' brain buckets is with the well-written, well-formed thoughts and ideas of amazing authors. So you want to drown your kids, marinate your kids, cover them in story. They don't need to focus on how you write. They need to absorb the words. Let the language roll over them. Let it become part of their heart and soul. That is the secret sauce to writing, is reading. Don't rush to the pen. Don't rush to the pencil. Rush to the library. Grab some books. If you know that you want your kids to write an essay about NASA, you go to the library and you get books on the Apollos and the moon project and rockets and thrusters and stories and Goodnight Moon, even just stories about space and exploration and just NASA and aeronautics and astronauts. You fill their head with these ideas before they ever even think about using a pencil. So don't underestimate this. This is the core of getting kids to write, to be excited about writing, or even if they're not so excited about it, to be proficient, competent, and to excel at writing, is to fill their heads with amazing stories. Even in the Bible, the Lord spent most of the Bible telling us stories. If he really wanted us to remember something, he told us a story. The best speakers are the ones that say, you know what happened on my way to the conference today? They get your attention. Stories are how we become invested in information. The facts and figures are great for 0.76% of the population, but the rest of us need a story. We need a heart connection. So read to and with your kids. Don't think that there's a magic age that you should no longer read to your children. Read for as long as you can touch them. If they live in your house, read aloud with them. Have them read independently. Listen to audiobooks in the car. Recite things that you are memorizing together. Just language washing over them. The secret sauce to writing is reading. Don't forget that. The power of the read aloud, where you sit and you enjoy a story with a hot cup of something wonderful. The power of the read aloud is that children, as they listen to stories, they're listening to excellent language spoken correctly, and then they absorb that vocabulary. They absorb the sentence structure without you ever having to teach subject and predicate, adjectives and adverbs. Oh, that stuff is great for English teachers and for passing entrance exams. But for writing, you want excellent descriptive language, then you read eloquently written stories to your kids, and you read them often. So enjoy the stories. Kids can read independently. You can listen to audiobooks on the go. You can squeeze read alouds in between all the time. Try and spend a few minutes of reading aloud every single day with your kids. Don't kick yourself if you can't do it every single day. Just make it a pattern. You want your kids to write well. That's the goal. So marinate them in the story. Does that make sense? That's the secret sauce. The next thing, before they ever pick up a pencil, is that you want them to experience something before they have to write about it. Imagine that you want your child to write a research paper or a report on tide pools at the ocean, and the different types of life that you see at the ocean, or on the shore, in the rocks, like Torrey Pines in San Diego. Beautiful, beautiful. So you hand them a blank piece of paper, and they stare at you, and they may even cry, but they don't have anything to write about. Instead, you pack them up and you take them to the ocean. You let them put their toes in the sand. You watch the tide go out, and you spend the day exploring the tide pools, taking pictures, pausing, listening, looking, watching the little crabs move in and out of the little puddles of ocean water, delighting together when you see a starfish or a sea anemone or whatever gets trapped in the tide pools. And you spend the day listening to the ocean, dodging the seabirds, looking through the tide pools, talking about, what do you hear? What does it smell like? What does the ocean water taste like? What does it feel like? What does the starfish feel like? What does the sand feel like? Running through your senses, just talking as you're exploring the beach. And then you have filled their brain bucket with experience that they can make a connection with as they are sharing their thoughts and ideas on paper later. So the first is the secret sauce to writing is to read. The second secret ingredient to getting kids to write is to get them to experience something first. You want them to write about animals, you take them to the zoo. You want them to write about the snow, build a snowman first. You want them to write directions on how you make cupcakes? Make cupcakes and enjoy them together over tea or at the park. And then now you're getting ready. You're almost set to pick up the pen. Did you hear what I said? You are almost set to pick up the pen. Remember, the secret sauce to writing is reading and experience first. This next step in teaching kids to write is where most homeschoolers and even quite a few teachers, they skip over this next step. This next step is huge. Remember, if you're going to have kids write, they need to understand that writing is a process. Almost nobody sits down with a blank piece of paper and a perfectly sharpened pencil, and then half an hour later hands in a perfectly written, eloquent paper. Nah, it takes steps. It's a process. You have to, it's kind of like yogurt where it has to ferment for a while. So you read stories, you touch, feel, see, smell, and delight in an experience, and now you start moving towards that blank piece of paper. But you want to do it carefully. So what is the step? What is it that you need to do in between the books and the experience and that finished paper? It's called brainstorming. Brainstorming. I have a whiteboard in the room with me right now. It's one of my favorite tools. I use it all the time. But if you have a whiteboard, this is what you would use your whiteboard for. If you don't, you can just use a blank piece of paper. But you put the writing utensil in your hand, and then you ask your kids, tell me everything that you remember about the ocean. What did it sound like? What did it feel like? And you're just crazy fast writing down everything they say in a mess, a legible mess. But you write down all the words. What did the ocean, how tall was the ocean wave that splashed mommy in the face? What did the sand feel like? What colors did you see in the sand? What things? Write it all down. You're just writing. You're trying to fill up the whiteboard or the piece of paper with their words and adding vocabulary as you're, oh, that sound of the wave coming over and then psh, that is a wave crashing or breaking on the shore. So breaking waves, tide pools, sea anemone. You're just brainstorming. What do you see? What do you see? What do you see? Brainstorming. Then you put it away. What? No, you put it away. You come back to it the next day or in the next sit down that you're going to be working. And then you say, okay, look at all this stuff. Do you remember anything else about our trip to the ocean? And then you add more with a different color. You add more. You add more. And then now you start to say, okay, you remembered a lot about our trip to the ocean or whatever it is you're writing about. Do any of these things go together? Maybe, oh, these are all the things that we saw that were alive. So now you start to take your big brainstorm session and you start to circle the things that were alive. You circle the sounds, you circle the smells, and you start to organize this information that the kids have dumped from their experience or from the story that they've read. Brainstorming, dumping out everything that you know, assisting your child by actually saying, oh, you know what that's called? And then you write that on the board or on the piece of paper. Brainstorming, pulling the ideas out, labeling things, writing words correctly, saying, gosh, was there anything that we smelled when we were there? Touching all the senses, pulling out all the adjectives, the verbs. What did we do? We walked, we ran, we crouched, we dug, we observed, we looked, we listened. Adding all of those words in our brainstorming session. Remember, you're filling your child's brain bucket before they hold the pencil. You're setting them up for success. You read stories about the ocean. You go to the ocean. You talk about your trip And then you brainstorm and you write down their ideas so that they don't get slowed down by going, well, how do you spell breaker? Is it Braker, breaker? You don't want to slow them down. You want their imagination to overflow. Does that make sense? Now, remember, they speak, you write. All 5 of my kids, I've done this with all of my kids all the way through high school. This whole pre-writing stuff, this brainstorming, I still will do sometimes to this day, even with my 20-year-old, who is a magnificent writer. He's actually a screenwriter and writes fantastic stories. And sometimes he just needs to get his ideas out. So he's like, Mom, will you just take notes while I talk? Absolutely. So I'll take bullet notes as he's writing. Brainstorming. These things, the secret sauce, the reading, the experience, the brainstorming, are what most people skip, and it's the reason why kids hate to write, because they're staring at that nasty blank piece of paper. We don't want our kids to look at a piece of paper and to start to cry. Instead, we want them to be equipped and prepared to attack that piece of paper and to start to draft it with amazingness. So going through the steps of writing, you have the secret sauce of writing, you have brainstorming. The art of brainstorming puts the pen in your hand, especially when the kids are younger. Oh, of course, they can do it by themselves when they get to be in high school, if they've been trained properly. If they haven't, then they still will need your assistance. But the beauty of brainstorming with somebody else is that they're also simultaneously practicing the art of listening and collaborating. And that's a huge life skill. You will know when they're able to do this on their own. But it is such an amazing gift to teach them how to do this. It will help them in everything that they do. So once they've brainstormed, then you can use different kinds of tools to help them organize their thoughts. I use my whiteboard. I use white pieces of paper that I take notes on as they're talking, my kids. Then I circle things or color code things as we go through, and they tell me, well, how do they make sense of all of this information? They also use graphic organizers, which are things like word webs, where they'll have a circle that you put the subject in the middle, like writing in the middle, and then you connect other circles to it, and you create this web of ideas. So you can do word webs, you can do graphs, you can do lists where you have, these are the things that I heard, felt, saw, touched. Once you get to all of that, now you have a rich pool of resources to help your kids. Now they get to actually start to write down their ideas. And when kids are writing, you want to say, okay, what are you going to be writing? Because the first thing that you need to understand once you pick up the pencil or the pen is, who is your audience? Who is this piece of writing for? Because, Mama, remember, the purpose of writing is to communicate. It's not a grade. It's not a checkbox on a lesson plan. All writing has a purpose. And so teach your kids from the time that they first start to write that you need to know, who is this for? Is it for mommy? Is it for your 4-year-old little sister? Is it for grandma? Or is it for the Bible study at church? Who is your audience? Because once you know who the paper is for, then you can tailor the language to go with it. Does that make sense? So you're going to write about the beach very differently if you're writing it for your 4-year-old sister or if you're writing it for grandma. You're going to use different words, different size words, different lengths of sentences, right? So filling the mind, filling your brain with story, experiencing, brainstorming, know your audience, that's key. Realize the purpose of what is it that you're writing. Are you writing a story? Are you writing a description? Are you writing instructions? Are you informing someone about something? Are you trying to persuade someone about something? So when kids are little, they need to understand, say you want them to write a paragraph about tide pools at the ocean. Well, that's fine, but why? Why do they need to write this? Who is it for? Hey, let's write a paragraph about our trip to the tide pools for Grandma. And let's make sure that because Grandma lives in Iowa, let's make sure that Grandma can hear, see, touch, and feel the tide pools with our words. And we're going to dazzle her by calling things by their proper names. And it's going to take us a little bit to build this paragraph, but this is what we are working toward. Does that make sense? So as now that paragraph has a purpose. You're bringing Grandma to the beach through your paragraph. That's way different than just write a paragraph about the tidal pools. That's boring. Instead, now there's a reason for kids to add senses and sight and smell and feeling into that paragraph. And there's a reason for them to work on it, to start it, and then to make it better, and then to make it better, because it's for Grandma, right? So a purpose. Wrapping up with how to teach kids to write. Don't be in a rush. Oh, this is a hard one. I'm one of those moms that loves red pens. I like when you see a piece of writing go from, okay, those are nice thoughts, and then watch it develop into something fantastic. And kids like that too. What they don't like is when you take that red pen and you write all over their paper, and then you ask them to rewrite that paper over and over. So from the very beginning, identify the purpose of that piece of writing. And there's all kinds of writing. Don't get hung up on that it has to be an essay. It has to be a research paper. Text messages is a form of writing. Grocery lists, form of writing. How to make an ice cream cone, form of writing. Letters, directions, descriptions on the back of a deodorant bottle, forms of writing. So kids need to know what the end product is going to be, but they don't need to know it right away. At first, you're just filling their brain bucket. And then they need to understand that it's going to take time. If you give them enough time, where you're not sitting them down and saying, okay, in the next 20 minutes, you're going to write a complete page on tide pools. Ready, set, go. Instead, you've taken them to the ocean, you've checked out books from the library, you've created a whiteboard or a piece of paper filled with vocabulary and sights, smells, and such from the ocean. You have organized this information into what's on the shore, what's in the tide pools, what did the what did the water look like, what was the sky like, what other creatures did you see? You've organized that information. You've identified that, hey, we're going to be writing to Grandma and we're going to take her on a virtual trip to the tide pools. But let's make it awesome. So we're going to run it through just like a professional writer. We're going to start with all of this, and now we're going to start to make it make sense. We're going to put it through the writing process, where we're going to write fast first, but we're not going to worry about spelling at all. And we're not even going to worry about periods or question marks at all. We're just going to write. Then tomorrow, we'll come back to it and we'll just put punctuation in there to make sure that it makes sense. And then day by day, you add another layer to the editing process. And so they go through the research, they go through the organizing, they draft whatever it is that they're going to write. If they're little, they dictate it to you. Mama, it's okay if you're the one holding the pencil. Let the ideas flow out of their mind and you be the one to write it down. One of my kids, very delayed fine motor skills, brilliant mind, brilliant writer, needed me to be his personal secretary for a really long time, like until high school. And even today, if he has a big paper that he needs to write or a big idea that he needs to write down, I will still be his secretary because I don't want him to trip on his fine motor skills on the way to communicating the amazing message that he has to share. So you can teach your kids to write. Slow down, snuggle with them, read and read and read some more. Go exploring, touch, feel, taste, smell, listen. Brainstorm. Gather as many information and labels and vocabulary and sights and smell words into one place. Organize those thoughts. Draft without worrying about spelling or punctuation. Edit where you revise one thing at a time. Edit again. Maybe do some more research and keep doing that until it's polished. And then you present it because they should be proud of what they wrote. Grandma will be thrilled to receive that paragraph or whatever it is that they've written. Share their work. Let them know that you are proud of them. Let them see the process from beginning to end. Don't make a big deal about it. As you're teaching your kids to write, have most of their writing be simply the brainstorming process. It's okay to just brainstorm about your trip to the zoo, your trip to the grocery store, the movie that you watched with the family last night, about the board game night, about what it felt like to be sick on Christmas morning. Just brainstorm. You write it down. You don't have to chase every idea from the beginning of the idea to a finished writing project. It's okay. If by the time your kids graduate from high school, they can communicate clearly on paper because you've taught them how to gather information, organize that information, and then to sort it and draft it and polish it, then Mama, you've done a great job. So don't lose sight of the goal. The goal in teaching your kids to write is that they will communicate clearly. Stay on track. You can do it. Hey, if you have any questions, make sure that you write down my contact information. You can reach me at abetterwaytohomeschool.com. My name is Bekki Sayler. I am the author owner of A Better Way to Homeschool. I have make sure that you grab all your resources from this workshop. I am really, really, really excited that you were able to spend some time with me today. I would love to hear what you gleaned from this, and make sure that you grab your printables and your cheat sheets. And at the end of the conference, or in the conference, we also have this digital swag bag. It is loaded with goodies for you. Make sure that you grab your swag. I've got some goodies for you in there, as all of the speakers do. So thank you for joining me today for this workshop on how to teach your kids to write. I would love to hear what you thought, and I can't wait to enjoy the rest of the conference with you. Have a wonderful day. Go fill your kids' brain buckets. Bye.